I am absolutely excited to have Tony Martinez with us today for a couple of reasons. First of all, thank you for finding a workaround for the hurricane. Tony says he's just fine right now, so no need to worry about him. And we're thrilled that you're here because things are changing and shifting in the market, and you have a very specific perspective and insight that I think is really going to help people. So Tony, for those of you who don't know, Tony is the owner of the CDPE organization. He was a master instructor for them and is now the guy running the show. So Tony, if you want to give them any little bit of background on you, and we'll just jump right in.
Absolutely. And just to preface this, if I disappear on you, it's one of two things happen: alien abduction, or I lost the internet and power. So I'm kind of leaning toward number two, but you never know. But it is a thrill to be here. I mean, it just, things couldn't get more interesting if we tried, right? But I am excited to bring the CDPE back. We acquired it May 20th of last year and brought it back about a month and a half later. And next thing you know, it was so amazing, Amy. No sooner did I send out the email saying the CDPE is back, it must have been no more than 30 seconds or so, and renewals from my OGs just started coming in. OGs are the way we affectionately refer to the old guard or original gangsters. People can take their pick. And these were folks that were former CDPs, and a lot of former CDPs also star power stars. So we have a lot in common.
Well, we're excited to hear your perspective. You spoke briefly at the Star Power Conference in July and really woke some people up. So let's do some more waking up today.
Sounds good. Yeah, my goal is to do exactly that. I see a whole lot of people with their head in the sand, as I like to joke around. And things have really, really changed in the past 3 months. We're having conversations now that we didn't have 6 months ago. In fact, the conversations we're having now would have been considered sacrilege a year and a half ago. When I acquired the CDPE, people laughed at me. People ridiculed me. They said, "You're insane. Why? There's no need for this. Nothing's going to happen. Life is good." Here we are.
I think at the end of the day, one of the things that stuck with me from what you said earlier this summer was, if we are coming from a place of truly wanting to serve the people in our database in our market, it's a matter of helping them figure out what's the best solution for them. And the ultimate goal is, of course, to keep everybody in their house if at all possible.
Yeah.
And it's not always possible. So how do we help the ones who have no other choice?
Well, I'd like to go ahead and first touch on helping the ones that may have an option, because what happens is that was always part of the movement. The CDP was a movement. We helped hundreds of thousands, if not close to 1 million distressed homeowners avoid foreclosure. There was a lot of sacrifices along the way. I, as an instructor, was gone every single week from my family, but we were making a difference. And nothing's changed as far as what our mission's all about. That was one of my promises to the former owners, is that I would continue the legacy that first and foremost, a CDP should do everything possible to help someone stay in their home. So time is short, so I can't get into all that, but just a little knowledge, or just asking questions. What have you done? Have you talked to the bank? Is there any way that they might work with you? Sadly, most people, by the time they reach out to one of us, it's already too late, because what tends to happen is they kind of kick the can down the road, and maybe they had their head in the sand or whatever. Most of the time when they come to us, they may have a sale or auction date in just 3 or 4 days. And then we have to go into triage mode, right? We got to go in emergency mode. But just knowing that there are people that may qualify for a modification, they may qualify for some type of forbearance agreement. And at the end of the day, it's smart business from a potential liability standpoint that we have a paper trail that it was discussed with them, ways to stay in their home. So no one can ever come back and accuse us of just having dollar signs in our eyes. And the minute they walked into the house or the office, we just pushed a listing agreement in front of them and they're done. Now, transitioning to those that have to exit. Here's the first thing I teach. Stop referring to what they're losing as their home. See, they're losing their home, but you got to quickly help them make the transition to not look at it like they're losing a member of the family, and look at it like it's just a property. So start calling it a property, and you know what we do? We help people exit that property with dignity. There's no dignity in being shown to the curb by the sheriff.
No.
And here's something that's so different from the last time around. There is more equity in the market this time around. And explain to me, how is it possible for someone with equity in their home to be facing foreclosure and be days away from the home being auctioned? They could list with one of us and it would just be a regular sale. And all of us know how to do a regular sale. So this is kind of like the new CDPE is all about. Guys, let's not go in with blinders on, thinking that everyone in distress is underwater. They're not. There will be a percentage that are. And if my prediction holds true, and I've been unfortunately right up until now, there's going to be a lot more people underwater, because I do not believe this fallacy, this tale that's being spun, that we are an equity-rich nation sitting on tons and tons of money. And if that's something you would like me to expand upon, I would love an opportunity to kind of share my thoughts on that.
Well, absolutely. You made a couple of points there. First of all, I'm going to carry the flag of exit the property with dignity. I think that is one of the fine statements that we all should walk away from this with. The next being, everyone distressed is not underwater. I think there is a perception. And Tony, that brings up for me, any suggestions you have on educating the market ahead of them being too late?
Well, but the only thing we can do is get proactive in reaching out to them. See, typically in 49 of the 50 states that I know of, we don't really have access to people that are delinquent. And I'm okay with that. I'll tell you why. Somebody that's behind 2 or 3 months on their payment, I don't think it's anybody's business that they're having issues. My understanding is, I've been told by several students that are from Maryland, that in Maryland, you actually can obtain a list of someone that's in delinquent status. For most people, it becomes public record. There's a notice of default, there's a list pendants, whatever it's called in that particular state. Now, unfortunately, it's public information, it's out there. We have to get aggressive in reaching out to these folks via phone, knocking on doors, direct mail, foreclosure prevention webinars and seminars, and educate them that foreclosure is not the only option. In fact, if there was a catchphrase that everyone should be using, is foreclosure is not the only option. Now, when we sit down with them, we put on our real estate hat and we ask several questions. And before you know it, we're going to ascertain whether they're in an equity position or not. If it's an equity position, it's a regular sale. If it's not, then switch hats and put on your short sale cap. That's where our training comes in. We can walk you through every step of the way.
Okay, so let's back up to this phrase, foreclosure is not the only option, because I think that could be a great headline, if you will, for people who are doing video, people who have regular podcasts. Of your students, what are some of the best practices you're seeing for people to get the word out?
There's nothing better than a phone call or knock on the door. And I would say ultimately knocking on the door. When it's public record, everybody and their brother buys the list. So they're getting bombarded with letters, postcards, some of them from attorneys, some of them from agents, some of them from investors, and some of them from scammers masquerading as investors. So we got to cut through that clutter. So we got to try all of the above. If there's 8 things that you can do, try 9, as a way of making sure that they find out, and don't just try one time. They're in different stages of the foreclosure process. One of the things I teach is I teach the agents to work backwards. And people go, what does that mean? I go, it's simple. The people you contact first are the ones that have a sale date on their property, an auction date. That's public record.
Mhm.
They obviously have the least amount of time and should have the least amount of excuses. So focus on them first. Put 70% of your distressed property efforts into that category. And some of them may only have days, 2 or 3 days. That's fine. That's enough time for us to do what we do.
So if I find someone whose auction date is in a week,
hmm
I'm going to their house, I'm knocking on their door, what is the first thing you would recommend I say?
Are you aware that your property will be auctioned off in a week? And then bring proof with you.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll probably say, no, that's not true. That can't be right. I have an attorney. They told me that they have things under control. And then I act the fool and I go, well, I could be wrong, but I don't think so. See, I got this just this morning, just an hour ago, right off the courthouse website. Why don't we do this? Why don't you allow me to come in and you call your attorney and you ask them what's going on? Because if they've exhausted all options for you to stay in the property, that's where I come in and I can offer some solutions for you to minimize the consequences, because the consequences to foreclosure are several and they're very, very long lasting.
Yes.
So I approach them. I teach people to approach them as a foreclosure prevention advocate. I'm just here to make sure you know what your rights are and what your options are. What are you doing? What have you done? And of course, throughout my course, well, pardon the pun, of course, throughout my course, I'm teaching them dialogue that they can use, because not everyone is just going to just say, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful that you knocked on my door. I prayed that an agent would knock on my door today to list my home. No, some folks take a little convincing, and you have to know what to say, when to say it, and how to say it.
I think that's one of the biggest hurdles people don't get over. It's what stands in their way of moving forward with helping these folks.
Yeah, they're going through a very difficult time, and there's 7 deadly emotions that they're probably all encountering, whether it's denial, greed, anger, apathy, hopelessness, revenge. So you have to know how to identify where they're at and how to approach them at that level.
Can you run through those again? That was a fantastic set of emotions for people.
All right, let me see if I can remember all of them. There's denial, okay, and then there's anger,
Mm-hmm.
then there's revenge, there's greed,
Mm-hmm.
there's
Apathy.
hopelessness and apathy.
That's 6 out of 7. I think we're close.
I might think of the other one between now and this evening.
Okay. When you're listening to your hurricane shutters bang against your head, just text me, Tony.
Yeah, I will. I definitely will get you that information.
Boy, you're dropping pearls like you got a truckload of them. So I'm just trying to keep up. So thanks
No
for
worries.
revisiting that. Okay, so you're in the house. You have them call the attorney. If they get a hold of the attorney, play that out for me. What's happening in that scenario?
Well, I think you said it, if they get a hold of the attorney.
Right.
I think the first step is to say, listen, there's a real estate agent here at my door, and he says that there's a sale date on my property on this date, and he pulled it up this morning. Is that possible? Is that true? So, I don't want to become enemies with the attorney. Attorneys, in fact, foreclosure defense attorneys can be an excellent source of referrals for us.
Sure.
You get enough of them, that once they've exhausted their list of things that they can do, they can go ahead and come back and give them to us. But I just want to say, hey, maybe the attorney was under the impression that the sale date had been pushed back. Many of these attorneys are working with multiple clients. I mean, back in the day, it was a license to print money if you were a foreclosure defense attorney. And I
Right.
think that's going to happen again. You know, they had several hundred clients.
Mhm.
They were paying them several $100s a month. So things could fall through the cracks. It could be a mistake or it could fall through the cracks.
Mhm. Okay. Let's if we can go off on that tangent just for a minute, and I know everybody watching is gonna have a ton of questions. I'm just trying to hit some of the high ones.
Sure.
When you reach out to attorneys who already have a desk stack of files,
Hmm.
what are what's your approach to let them know that you're different? You're not just another ambulance chaser. What are some of the things you do to get through that gatekeeper to actually talk to the attorney?
Well, I think that what happens is sometimes attorneys are also foreclosure defense attorneys are also title companies or do closings.
Mm-hmm.
And we can work together where I direct those deals back to them. So as a listing agent in the short sale, I have control over what closing agency or title company we're going to use.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, one should have their preferred ones that are short sale friendly, but you could certainly be a source of business for that person. My approach to them will usually be, listen, you do foreclosure defense, right? Yeah. So what do you advise your clients to do once you've exhausted all available options to stay in their home? What do you advise them to do? The answer should be, well, at that point, I advise them to either sell or short sale.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, then I got a real issue, because what are you saying? You just walk away? I mean, once you've done what you've done and you've gotten all the money you're going to get, what, you just part ways and say, good luck with your life?
Mm.
There should be one more thing that the attorney should do. And that's to say, well, listen, we can't, we're done. You know, and I can work closely with them. We have a situation where we have a family member about 4 years ago that approached us because they were losing their home. And obviously they know we're in the real estate business and they know what my forte is. And they were like, can you help me? I go, what do you want to do? I always want to ask them, what do you want? What do you know, and the person says, I want to stay in my home, then we're going to have a conversation about staying in their home. But we knew that there was no way they could stay because it just wasn't working. The income wasn't there, right?
Mm-hmm.
That says, I need to buy time. I need to stay in this property as long as possible so that we can get our lives together. I introduced him to my preferred foreclosure defense attorney. Next thing you know, he is retained by said family member. 4 years, he was able to keep them in the home.
Wow.
Now, Florida's unique for a lot of reasons, but you know, our state's very borrower friendly. It's a judicial state, so all foreclosures have to go through the court system, so it can take a while. Oh, he bought them 4 years, and here's the wonderful thing: when they ran out of time, when it was done, the attorney obviously knew to dance with who brung them, you know. And even if this had not been a family member, the relationship I have with this attorney is like, you note who brought you this lead, so that when it's all said and done, you say, guys, we're out of time. And that's what the attorney did. He says, he called me out of the blue one day and says, listen, they got 60 days, 60, 90 days to get out, put it on the market. Let's get it sold. We did. And unique situation, I mean, I don't know how about unique, but a very, very satisfying situation was, had they attempted to sell 4 years ago, they were underwater. When we sold the property and closed on it 3 or so months ago, 4 months ago, they had equity. They were able to walk away with some money.
Wow.
Now, I don't want people to fixate on that, because the reverse can potentially happen now. Someone that can sell right now with equity may decide to kick the can down the road and be successful at it. A year may pass, several months may pass. We don't know what the market brings. If things happen like we're thinking it could happen, they might go from a positive to an underwater situation.
For sure. Okay, so now let's say the ball is back in your court.
Mhm.
What are the things that sellers who are in this situation are typically expressing as their primary fears
Mhm.
about the short sale process? A lot of people don't understand what it is.
They don't. And again, what we first have to do is determine whether it's a regular sale or a short sale. And at the end of the day, I don't think that the issue is I don't understand a short sale, so I won't list. The issue is, are they prepared to finally come to terms with the fact that they have to exit the property? How, whether you sell it regular or not, it's less important than are these folks finally willing, have reached a point of acceptance and action.
Mhm.
If they reach that point, then the rest will come together. But they may not be there. And it could be that one, let's say it's a couple, one might be there and the other one is so upset, so angry at the other, at themselves, at the bank, at you, and I just got here. All of these issues are there, right? So we have to
Yeah.
get them both to a place where it's like, listen, you've done all you can to stay in the property. I know it's difficult, but I urge you, I counsel you to look for a dignified exit. Because if you allow the foreclosure to go through, you will be living with some dire consequences for many, many years, if not forever. And of course, I teach the agents what those consequences are. And I tell the agents, memorize these,
Mm.
make these arrows in your quiver. So when you go out, it might take one arrow for someone to say, fine, I get it. And it may take 3 or 4 to finally get someone to realize that what's done is done. It's time to move on.
Mhm. All right, so if I'm looking at 2023, what are some of the trends that are starting to show up that you think people need to be aware of?
Well, I mean, it's one of these things that I get, Amy, and I get less and less pushback than I did a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Okay. I went from being crazy to a prophet, and I'm neither, but I'm somewhere like in between there. But when I hear industry experts say it's going to be okay, I hear it's going to be bad.
Mhm.
And when they say it's going to be bad or difficult, I hear it's going to be terrible.
Mhm.
Because what happened in 2006 and 7, nobody pushed back more against the term housing bubble than our own industry.
Mhm.
And I have this saying, it's not flattering, but I kind of tell it like it is. And that's real estate agents, we get high on our own supply. And, to get an agent to admit that the market is going to change, correct, do any of these things, it's like pulling teeth. They act like I'm calling their baby ugly or something. So what I have done is let the numbers speak for themselves. We were in an environment that, because of the mandates and moratoriums, foreclosures were essentially on hold for 18 months, almost 2 years. All
Mhm.
those are gone now. And different states respond at different pace. But what we've all agreed on now is that the foreclosure numbers are going up. I've become a numbers guy because we're all entitled to our own opinions, but not our own facts. So one of the things I do whenever I do one of my market updates is I just share numbers. I tell you what, maybe, I don't know if you're okay with this, but if you let me share the screen, I'll share some stats with your folks.
Yeah, please. Tammy, oh, we gotta, if I can get Heather to mute herself, that would be great.
Ooh. Oh.
There we go. Do you have it yet, Tony?
Let me see. No, not yet.
Okay.
So if not, I could just read them off, but I have them in slides if you could pull that off.
I think we got it.
Okay.
No worries, Heather. We still love you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not a co-host yet, so I can't share my screen.
Okay, hang on 1 second. Let me see if I can get it from my end. You want to go ahead and start talking, and then if we get it
Yeah.
cleared up,
Okay.
you can throw it up on the screen.
I'm working on it.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
So what I look for, and one of my biggest sources is Atom.com, ATTOM.com. Atom just collects this data all the time. They acquired Realty Track.
Oh,
So once a month their numbers come out. So the top five states for foreclosure starts. Okay. And foreclosure starts is exactly that, the initial notice all the way to the end. California, number one, Florida, number two. This was shocking to me. Tennessee. What's going on in
Really?
Tennessee? Tennessee is number three. Illinois, 4, Ohio, 5. So this changes, but Florida, California, we get calls almost every day now from brokers say, help me, help my agents. And most of them are from the West. From the
mhm.
West, without a doubt. So that number kind of foreclosure starts are up 219% in the first half of 2022. So
Wow.
now, again, people will say, yeah, but last year there weren't that many because of the moratoriums. I get it. I get you. But we're now seeing the numbers start to approach pre-COVID numbers. So that's interesting that those numbers are perking up. In August, we don't have September numbers yet. In August, foreclosure starts were up 12% over the month before and 187% over the year before.
Wow.
Woo-hoo. I have the power. Can you see my slides now?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look here. Now, I got through all that. There you go. The filings. Okay. So this includes the actual default notices all the way to the bank repossessing the house. That's a bad thing. So first 6 months of 2022, up 153%. Okay. Now, default notices, these are up 14% over the month before, 118% over the year before. So we're seeing more and more default notices go up. What a lot of times people don't realize is by law, the servicers have to wait till someone is in default at least 120 days, 4 months. It doesn't mean that on day 121, they're going to rush to initiate foreclosure action. Right. So,
Right.
but once they reach a certain point, the numbers say, hey, once they're 6 months, 8 months, 12 months behind, the likelihood that they will be able to work anything out is remote. And that's when they have an obligation to move forward and begin the foreclosure process. Now, I hear this all the time. Well, there's no REOs. Please understand that, and I know your audience knows this, but just in case, an REO, real estate owned, is because the bank basically put it up for auction and took it back.
Yeah.
Which it's too late for us to help someone at that point. We're trying to avoid REOs like the plague, because if we do a successful short sale or we do a successful regular sale for someone in foreclosure, there is never an REO in that situation. But in the first 6 months, it's almost 21,000, which is up 30% over the first half of 2021 and 113% over the first half of 2020. So it's a fallacy when people say, well, banks aren't even processing or taking properties back. Yeah, they are. It's just that banks are not in a hurry to do it, but they are. And Illinois leads it, Michigan, Pennsylvania, California. These are the states that were in the top 5, top 10 in 2008, 9, and 10. It's
Interesting.
deja vu all over again, right? Now, metropolitan areas of greater than 1 million with the worst foreclosure rates last month: Cleveland, Chicago, my home state, Jacksonville, Riverside, California, Orlando, Florida.
Wow.
And it's one of those things that once you start paying attention to this, the numbers are shocking. You know, there's national numbers, there's state numbers, and then what's going on in the counties and cities that you serve.
Right.
That's what you need to focus on. Get those numbers. This scared me. So I'm driving my son to school yesterday, and I hear that Americans are more in debt than ever before. But it's worse than I thought. I have been saying since the beginning that we are in a recession, because technically we are in a recession.
Mm-hmm.
What has thrown people off, and this is the way I teach, I'll just say it like it is. People, I look when we go out and I see the restaurants full and all these things full, and I go, people are spending money like they're drunken sailors. How is that? How is that possible? Or do they not know that we're technically in a recession? And you know what is that people are still employed, right? So while the unemployment rate is still low, it hasn't registered yet. And then there's another thing I thought, people are living off their credit cards. Well, sure enough, the bottom 90% of US households saw a jump in 1 year of $300 billion in debt.
Wow.
The most ever. $300 billion. And the top 10% negligible. This is a recession that's affecting the middle class, whatever that is, and the ones that are more economically challenged. You say, what's contributing to this? Inflation's contributing to people not being able to make ends meet. The 60 to 62% of American households live paycheck to paycheck. Paycheck to paycheck. One missed check begins to fall apart. All this credit card debt that people have, let them miss one payment. Watch what happens to that really good interest rate they had. Watch it jump up probably to about 25 or 30%.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, they're paying more for gas. They're paying more for food. And if you don't have to decide between filling your tank or putting food on the table, consider yourself blessed, because there's a lot of people right now making that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Now, add to that, that property insurance is going insane. Look, what's this? I don't even want to know what's going to happen after this hurricane. There's so much fraud in Florida to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
that all the insurance companies are running for the exit. We basically have one or two that only write policies in Florida. That'll be down to one, the state-sponsored one. Because how many hundreds of millions of dollars in damage, if not billions of dollars in damage, Ian is going to cause? What's going to happen now? Well, then you have property taxes going up because the guy next door bought his house for $60,000 over appraised price. So does that mean my house is worth $60,000 more? We'll see about that.
Yeah.
And then if you have an HOA, we all know the HOAs have our best interest at heart. So they would never, ever consider raising what we pay monthly there. How many ways can you squeeze the American household? And then watch what's going to happen in October. That's the month that I feel, not because I predicted this, but I listen. And I think that's going to be the first month that we're going to see unemployment start to rise. And I think that what's happening and going to happen may cause unemployment to go up by maybe 1% or more, which equates to at least 1 million people more unemployed than now. So I teach my students, pay attention to the business news for your area. See, there's hiring freezes going on right now. You've heard about this.
Mm-hmm.
Then companies are laying off. Within our real estate industry, we've seen some very notable companies cutting back on their staff. But then I came across a term that is an amazing term. It's called stealth layoffs. And you go, what's that? Stealth layoffs is you got all these big companies now. A lot of the big banks are telling their employees, you must come back to the office now. You must come back to work. Well, a lot of folks have grown accustomed to remote work. What if 20% of those say, I'm not coming back? Thank you. You just lowered our payroll by 20%. They laid themselves off by not adhering to the policy of coming back to work. So just yesterday, I'm engaged in a debate with a very, very high-ranking individual at a very, very well-known company. And his belief was, nah, my agents really don't need this because there's so much equity in the market. I go, oh, okay. My response was, Americans have been treating their home like an ATM for the last 2 years. If they could refinance, they did. They did it once, twice, thrice. They didn't just do it for rate and terms. That would have been logical. Of course, they pull cash out. What do Americans do when cash is in their pocket? It burns a hole in it. What did they buy with said cash? Stocks, crypto, vacation property, plastic surgery, Corvette, which is driveway improvement.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a
no
lot of,
assets, no
yeah,
assets.
there's, and then on top of that, prices are starting to come down. My market, the MLS sent a notice out and our pending sales are down 30-something%.
Hmm.
Or I think it was 30-something% closed sales for July, and 25% pending sales. Properties are staying on the market longer. We're not getting as many offers. We're seeing prices come down, and they're going to come down a lot more. And then factor in this. Everyone that bought in the last 2 years, they bought at the top of the market, above market price. Now, some of the markets represented by your stars don't have a lot of FHA, but ones that do, they went in buying at top of market with only 3.5% equity. 4% reduction, just a 4% reduction means they're underwater. But wait, there's more. I'm listening to the news and I see a commercial for a lender for VA loans. And he says, you're a vet, we can refinance you up to 100% of your loan to value. That's eerily reminiscent of 2005 when we could get 105% refinancing rate. Wasn't that kind of like the beginning of the end?
Yeah.
When you borrowed more than your house was worth? Anyway, I think the argument is there that we're in for some rough waters. We are going to see more foreclosures. Learn to engage them. Whether they have equity or not, you'll be able to help them either way. Me being a big fan of The Walking Dead, which, by the way, the final episodes are premiering this Sunday, not that anybody else cares, but the number of zombie foreclosures is climbing. We have about 1.3 million residential properties in the US that are sitting vacant.
Oh.
And you're thinking, but why did they leave their home? And me thinks it's because many of them didn't know that they had the right to stay there until the very end, because there wasn't one of us engaging them, approaching them, helping them to make smart decisions. I apologize if I get a little passionate about this, but
you don't need to apologize for that.
this is the battle that I wage every day, trying to get people to wake up and say, let me be an early adopter. And look, it's going to be harder to make sales in 2023. I think that's the case. So why not engage in a niche, an area that most people ignore? Distressed properties is the low-hanging fruit. It's not sexy. We're not sexy like luxury, but we're not crowded either.
I know we've got a lot of people wanting to ask you questions, Tony. Is it
Okay.
if we jump into this?
Absolutely.
All right. Who has a question? Oh, hang on. You want to go ahead and stop your screen share, Tony?
Absolutely. You know, one of the questions that's probably going to come up, maybe I can preempt it, is that when we brought back the CDP, the first thing I wanted to do was grandfather in the OGs. So I've done everything possible to reach out to former CDPEs saying, folks, you don't have to take the course over again. I'm going to acknowledge that you were a CDPE as long as you show up on our database. And for the same $99 a year that you were paying before, I'm not going to raise it. I'm going to honor that. If you want to take the course, that's optional. You don't have to. I would, because you may
I
have
would.
not done a short sale in 12 years. But that generous offer of mine ends this year, because I think a year and a half is sufficient
Yeah,
to
for
give
sure.
all of the OGs a chance to come back. So what we do is we encourage them to send us an email saying, I'm an OG. I think I'm an OG. Am I an OG? And then we look it up, and sure enough, if we can find them, then we extend that offer to them, and then we can bring them back into the fold.
That's fantastic. Chris has a question, and then Heather. Let's go to Chris first.
Do we approach banks individually to find out who is 4 months or more behind, or is there a resource we can get? I'm part of the old guard, and we had lists then.
Well, I salute you, Ogard. Well, you don't approach the bank for that information because honestly, they're not allowed to give it out. They shouldn't give it out. Now, once it's the notice of default has gone out, the foreclosure process has officially begun, it is public notice, but you don't get the information from the banks. You get it from sources like, for example, your MLS. Like, for example, my MLS uses IMAP. For MLSs that use IMAP, you go on IMAP right now, and there's an option to search for properties that are in the foreclosure process. Then there's a courthouse. Every county, it's got their own circuit court and their own foreclosure court and their own foreclosure calendar. You can go in there and search the calendar for the ones that are coming up, everything from tomorrow forward. Now, I kind of encourage agents to invest in companies like Land Voice or RedX. I don't know if Amy, if you have a relationship with any of these data providers, but the advantage of going with them is that if you go on a courthouse site, you get a name, you get an address, but you don't get a phone number, right? The same thing with IMAP. So using one of these third parties, you can get phone numbers, but they also scrub the numbers against the do not call list, which is really, really important because you don't want to get in trouble, So those your companies, usually it's more than just a distressed properties list. You're buying, expires, FSBOs, and they throw in, distressed properties as well. So it's kind of like a 3-for-1. That's what I would do.
Okay. Heather is asking, how do we get hurt over the wholesalers who flood homeowners with all kinds of flyers and letters?
We got to get there first. See, if agents were as aggressive as scammers, we'd have a whole different business. So, scammers don't play. Scammers can be better at dialogue than the agents are, because they're going to show up at the house. It's probably going to be a nice looking couple dressed like normal people, very sincere. They don't wear caps that say, I'm here to take advantage of you. They prey on people's emotions. So we got to get to them first, and if they are in conversations with somebody, then it's easy to completely debunk whatever it is that they're offering them. I'll give you an example. The first thing a scammer is going to do is want the homeowner to go ahead and sign over their deed to them. Oh, because it's got to be in our name so that we can negotiate with the bank and everything else. Now you're done. Once that happens, you can't even sign a listing agreement if you wanted to, because you're not the owner of the property. But the mortgage, the note is still in your name, so you're still responsible. So we got to get there too. We got to become very aggressive in reaching out to them.
Great. Who's next? Thought I saw another hand on here. I'm scrolling through. Raoul's unmuted. Raoul, did you have a question for Tony? Okay, sounds like no. Tony, your website. So people know.
CDPE.com. I
Doesn't
kept
get
it
any-
simple. CDPE.com.
And if somebody wants to email to ask whether or not they're an OG, who do they send that to?
Support at CDPE.com.
Support?
At CDPE.com.
Great.
Now, I like to offer some special pricing for your agents, if I may, your stars.
Okay,
For someone that's just starting from scratch, hey, help me. What do I do? How do I get the training? Well, I have a Zoom series that starts October 12th. So Zoom has its good and bad. The good thing about Zoom is it's spread out 5 2-hour sessions over 5 weeks. So you get a chance to absorb it. I record every session. So even if you're late, leave early, or miss it, you still get the content. You get to play it over and over again. So it just kind of sticks to you, right? Now I've started teaching live again. And, you know, we don't have a lot on the calendar yet, but we will. I just got done with a couple in Florida. I'm one of the major franchises has once again endorsed the CDPE. So that's going to bring us to a lot of different venues very, very quickly going into 2023.
Okay.
So I wouldn't wait till a live one comes into town. I would do the Zoom. This would be the last Zoom series I'm doing, and then we're transitioning to on demand.
Okay,
So that it frees me up to do other things. But we got one more Zoom, so that's starting on October 12th. The training, the cost is $4.99. It's normally $4.99, but stars are going to get $100 off. And I want to make sure that I give you the right code. I wanted to come up with a code that everyone could remember. So what did I come up with? Oh, maybe something that has the word star in it, maybe. So maybe star 100. So
Okay.
when you go to CDPE.com, you select the Zoom one coming up on October 12th. And then when you get to the cart, you make sure you add that there. And my wonderful sister and right hand, because we're a family business here, just posted that link in the chat area. I hope you don't
beautiful.
mind.
No,
There
that's
as well. Now, the other thing I would suggest is if you're someone of influence and could arrange to put together a live class in your area, we'd love to talk to you. The 2 classes I did for a major company in Florida, I don't want to do any name dropping here. That was because one agent, one OG, reached out to me and said, Tony, how can I get you up here in Orlando? And I says, who are the leaders in your company? Talk to them. One introduction went to another introduction. Next thing you know, we pulled off 2 very successful classes there.
wonderful. Stacy, I think, had a question.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on one second here.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask back to the beginning. You talked about you know, when you're knocking on doors or, you know, getting the list and going and knocking on the door and saying, you know, are you aware your property will be auctioned in a week? And I was just curious what kind of a reception you get to that, because I feel like some people would be like, I mean, you said they might say no, and then you're like, here's the report that I just, you know, I could be wrong. I'm just like, how willing are they, or is this like super thick skin, get ready to rumble with
Oh,
these
yeah.
people?
Yeah, here's what I always do. Don't take it personal. Don't get defensive. There's some people that are their own worst enemies, and no matter any way you approach them, it's not going to go well. Here's what I teach. If you were to knock on somebody's door and say, hey, listen, I hear you're in trouble, or see that you're in trouble, we need to get you out of here, we need to list your property, blah, 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 blah. You know, you're the same as the bank. You're no better than the bank in their eyes. You know why? The bank's trying to kick them out, and now you're trying to help them get out. You know, so that's why you got to kind of take the approach of, I'm an advocate. I'm here to help people explore their options. I want to make sure that no one ever has to look behind and says, I didn't do everything I could. And yeah, if push comes to shove and there's no other option, I'm also very well equipped to help you transition to a new beginning. So be compassionate. Be compassionate. and not pushy, and expect that some people, they're in a bad place. They're in a bad place in their life. And don't take it personally if they, act a fool, right? That's why if you're going to go knock on doors, do it with a partner. Safety first.
Mhm.
And then it's not just that, it's also, I'm human. If someone hangs up the phone on me or cusses me out, I'm going to think about that for a couple of seconds. And then maybe that person that's with you is going to say, shake it off, baby. Wasn't it Taylor Swift that was like, shake it off, shake it off. Yeah, so that's it. That's the song you got to play when you're canvassing. And they get crazy on you. You play Taylor Swift and you shake it off and you keep going.
Tony, you crack me up, man. So glad to have you in my court. Okay, Heather asked, presented a scenario she wants your thoughts on. This week, she got a homeowner to talk to her, but the investor she had interested in it doesn't see the value. A short sale seems so much work for a $50,000 to $75,000 listing. Any thoughts?
Well, it is work. And here's the thing. There's compensation and then there's rewards. So the compensation isn't great. The rewards could be infinite. If somebody can work pro bono and not get paid to help someone, we as agents could work and make a little less. And in 3 or 4 years, that person may be ready to buy a $250,000 or $500,000 home, or they sent so many referrals your way that it's almost like the sky opened up and all of these leads are falling from trees, right? So yeah, there's easier ways to make money than doing a short sale. But for us to have a heart to serve, we know that the rewards are there. Then the other part of it is short sales have gotten better. This is not 2008. The problem with short sales now is not that the lenders don't know what they're doing, is that there's a whole new generation of real estate agents that don't know what they're doing.
True.
So if
true.
if at least one real estate agent in the equation knows what they're doing, most short sales will close in 2 or 3 months. 2 or 3 months? Oh, come on. You mean to tell me you don't have a regular sale that's taken 45, 60 days, 90 days to close? Come on. So, and look, we may get to the point where it's not so much an option as it becomes the market. No one predicted that short sales and distressed properties would become the market in 2009 and 2010, but it did. And I think it'd be foolish to say it can never happen again. Of course it could happen again, because we don't know what else is coming. Who predicted COVID?
I would piggyback on that and say, it's always been the philosophy at Star Power that you're taking care of your people. So if you have somebody who's in distress and they need you, are you going to turn them away because you don't know how to handle their situation? Or are you going to get educated and be there for them when they need you?
Mm-hmm. Those sing their praises. And one of the things I teach is no sooner do you conclude that transaction, you get their story on video. You say, you demonstrated an exceptional amount of courage and stamina and fortitude to go through what you went through. I think your story can inspire others. Would you allow me to interview you so that your story can get out? Now that video will sell and sell and sell for you over and over and over again.
For sure. We have time for only one more question, if there is one, and otherwise, I'm just going to say thanks. Anybody got one last question?
Sure.
All right. Tony, you're the man.
Amy.
Thank you so much for doing this for us today. I appreciate it so much. I know a lot of people are counting on being able to watch the recording too. So thank you.
May I say one last thing?
Of course you can.
I'm so proud of you and your organization. I'm so happy that Star Power is back. I'm so happy that it's in your hands. What Jana did and now you're going to help so many people, and the timing could not be better, because we've had an easy time or easy of sorts the last 2 or 3 years, but those days are behind us now. Now it's time to be skills-based again.
Yeah.
And what better organization than Star Power than to lead the way as far as teaching the skills necessary. So I hope that this is not the last time that you and I get together, and I'm certainly looking forward to Star Power next year.
Well, I already got you on the calendar for crypto in November.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
You can't get
And
away from me that easy.
yeah, that's my other passion, blockchain. So I keep busy.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
today. Thanks everybody for joining us. And we look forward to having you on the next Zoom call. Thanks, everybody.
All right, everyone, take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.